Hello everyone, I'm Suraj as this is the day 7 of my training session and I've got a couple of questions in the form of assignment. So let's just quickly dive into it. So the first question here is create a document on a waterfall model and explain each phase. So here we'll try to understand what is waterfall model. A waterfall model is basically a model or we can say a method which was involved in the software development life cycle. Basically, software development lifecycle is a method which is used, or we can say a standard procedure or step-by-step procedure which is involved in developing a software from a simpler requirement to a high-end application, I can say. So we'll try to understand this in a brief manner. So we'll try to understand each in brief. So firstly, we'll be seeing the requirement collection or the business requirement where the business analyst from the software company will be going to the client or will be communicating to the client and will be receiving the requirement which they have been pre-planned. Like they'll be like, they want this kind of application. So yes, they will hand over the requirement to the business analyst. Then moving forward, it is a system analyst. Then which is we can say it is basically a feasibility study. System analyst, or we can say it as a feasibility study wherein business analyst will be conducting a meeting or where the manager, finance department, HR team, and the product manager, everyone will be involved into this. And we can say the developers on testers also will be involved into this so that they'll be discussing about the product or we can say the application so that they'll get a plan that could they develop this software, how long it will take, or whether they have the resources, whether they have the developers or the testers present in the minimum or the maximum count, or they will be checking whether they have the infrastructure or the technical support towards the application. So yes, after doing this meeting, they'll come to a conclusion that whether they'll be getting a profit from this project or whether it will go into a loss if we work on this product, or maybe like the client will be paying some amount and for working over this if these developers and everyone will be spending a lot into this, or we can say it is more than the client pay, then it will go on loss, no doubt. So they'll be rejecting the project, or if they have the or if they are involved in the profit, or if they get profit from it, they'll surely accept the project. So yes, moving forward after the feasibility study or after the meeting, they'll be moving on to the first part, which is we can say it is a design, wherein the designers or architect will be designing the software on how it will be developed. Here, basically, there will be two parts. Firstly, the high-level design, and then comes the low-level design. Let us try to understand about high-level design. High-level design can be okay. Let's take an example stating that we are building, we will be planning a outline, or we can say some design will be planned. It will be a high level design. And if we are deep diving into the design, or if we are planning like in bedroom what will be there, or how many bedrooms will be there, or it is 1 BHK or 2 BHK, if they are planning this, it is the low level design. Or if we come towards the software end, low level design means the software modules or each and every modules they'll be designing, it is the low level design. So yes, moving forward, we'll be moving to the coding part wherein the developers will be developing or writing the code to develop the software or the application. Then after that, there'll be a phase, I can say, which is the integration, wherein all the codes will be integrated and it'll be formed an application. Like a smaller parts will be integrated and a huge application will be created. Then moving forward, there is testing where the software testers will test the application, whether the application is meeting the client requirement, or if it is stable, or if you can say if it is compatible to handle the load which will be coming from the customer end, or whether it looks good, or whether it is user friendly. So they'll be doing all kind of testings over this. And if they find it is compatible, they'll be moving it to the installation. Here the installation part comes, when the installation part comes, installation engineers will be going to the client side, and they'll be setting up the environment, and they'll be running the application on their own for the first time, and they'll be giving a demo, I can say. On the basis of this, the business analyst, on the basis of this, the business will start running, or the client will be starting use, or the client will be started to use the application on their own. And then comes the phase where we can say it is a maintenance phase. Whenever a client and the software, whenever they are dealing, they'll be making a contract, I can say contract, in which everything will be written and signed from the both end. And if we can see, like, if they have mentioned, like, for this year, or for 2 years, or for 1 year, the maintenance will be doing it for free. It means that whenever a client gets any issue, he'll be asking the software company, so that they'll fix it, or they'll upgrade it or update, or if you want some features to be removed which is not in use, these update will be done for free. But after the bond, I can say, after the bond, or after the maintenance period, the company will be charging some amount for the client to update or to make any changes in the application. So yes, this is it. This is it about the waterfall model. Yes, moving on to the next question. Create a document of a V model and explain each phase. So what is V model? V model is also a software development lifecycle method. I can say it is a process or the procedure to develop a software from a basic requirement which is being given by client to a high-end application. So we can get a question like, we might get a question in our mind stating why V model over waterfall model. I can say, like, waterfall model is a basic, or it is a traditional model in the software development lifecycle, whereas in a V model, there are many changes made. In waterfall model, the requirement which is being taken by the client, we cannot change the requirement after we'll be doing the feasibility study. Or we can say, after the feasibility study, the requirement will be locked, and the requirement won't be changed within the release or within the entire project, I can say. So yes, but whereas in a V model, here the requirements will not be fixed. We can say here the requirements will be fluctuating, or we can just change the requirement. If it is a constant, it is well and good. If we want to change, we can change at any point of time, I can say. And yes, moving to the V model, here the huge difference is that in waterfall model, we could not backtrack the requirement, or we couldn't backtrack that the requirement specifications, or we can say the design. We couldn't test the design, or we couldn't test the code. There is only a phase called as testing after the coding in the waterfall model. Whereas in V model, it goes hand in hand, or I can say it goes side by side. Here, the developers will be developing the software, and that side by side, the testers will be testing the software. And yes, and if there is any changes to be made, testers will be communicating to developers, or if developers finds some additional stuffs, they'll be communicating to testers, or they'll be communicating to business analyst or the customer or the client, and make this fix, and they'll be implementing this to the product. So yes, so we'll try to understand this in brief. Here, firstly, the business analyst will be giving the CRS. Here, firstly, the business analyst will be getting the CRS, which is the customer requirement specification from the client. He'll be sharing the CRS to both developers and the testers. Here the developers will be converting the CRS to the SRS, which is software requirement specification, which means that the customer requirement specification will be not in the software language, whereas it will be in the general form. They'll be converting it to the software language, like using the names or the using by stating like buttons or drop downs or some links. By this, they'll be converting it to the SRS, whereas the testers will be involved in writing acceptance test plans or acceptance test cases. And if they get any conflict, if they have any confusion, they could discuss it with developers, and and the developers could communicate back to the BA business analyst and could rectify these problems. So yes, here firstly they'll be getting the CRS, as I said, they'll be converting it to SRS. Then while converting it from SRS to high level design, or when it moves to design part, firstly we can see that it is a high level design, which means that the layout or the high level design or high level layout which has been set when they'll be converting the software requirement specification from this to the high level design. The testers will be involved in writing the system test plans, or I can say the system test cases. Okay, then the converting the high level design to low level design. Same way the testers will be writing integration test plans and integration test cases. And the same thing after the low level design, it'll be the coding part. When the coding part goes on here, these will be writing, the test engineers will be writing the unit test cases, or I can say white box testing, which means that they will be checking the code line by line. So yes, this is so yes, I can say this goes hand in hand, or like developers and testers both will be involved and goes hand in hand or side by side. So yes, here I can say that developers and testers goes hand in hand, and they can even change the requirement at any point of time. And it is also that the software will be tested from the beginning itself, like from the requirement specification, and then during the each phases they'll be having the testing going on. Here basically V model, we can say that it is a VV model, which means verification and validation model. Verification which will be done by developers, as I explained here, that they'll be testing, or they'll be going through the, or we can say they'll be converting CRS, SRS, a high level design, low level design, then coding, whereas testers will be involved in the validation process, which means which we can say like it is actual software testing, wherein they'll be doing unit testing or functional testing, integration testing, system testing, acceptance testing, and so on. So yes, let's move on to the third question. Moving on to the next question, create a document on agile methodology and explain the process. Here, the agile methodology is also a SDLC method, or the software development lifecycle method. But here, where the waterfall model is depleting, or I guess it has not been used nowadays, the agile methodology is being used by 90% of the companies, because nowadays the requirements, if they are not fixed, or if I say that the end product is not fixed, that what functionality will be having, just the client, if he has some ideas, he'll be communicating with the software companies, and he'll be implementing it in the further do, or you can say in the further life cycle, or the further cycle, or the further release, he might be changing it. So yes, agile methodology is very important in this kind of situation, because here the project or the product will be divided into smaller parts or the simpler parts, and they'll be forming, or they'll be merging at the end. Like they'll be forming smaller stories, and they'll be merging it and forming the higher end project. So yes, we'll try to understand this with a diagram. So here we'll be having a team which will be consisting of the core team, which is the developers or the test engineers, and mainly the Scrum Master. And we can say a share team which will be involved. We will be having like the architecture or UI UX designers or any network analyst. This will form a team. So yes, in the agile methodology, firstly there will be a strategy meeting in which they'll be discussing about the strategy, how and all they'll be doing this, and later moving on to the product roadmap, wherein they'll just match the uh, I can say match the stories which and all they have been formed and which and all they have been discussed and which and all they have been moved to a repository, I can say, or it is mainly called as a backlog. Then we'll be having a release plan when like they'll be dispatching or when they'll be releasing the sprint or the story, I can say. So yes, moving ahead, that is a sprint planning. Before understanding the sprint planning, I'll just go deep dive into this sprint planning. Here, basically in this agile methodology, we'll be having a product backlog, a sprint backlog. We'll try to understand what is product backlog, where it is, I can say like it is a prioritized, I can say like it is a prioritized list of features which need to be implemented in the entire project. But in this sprint backlog, it is like in a particular sprint or in at the next sprint, which and all the products or which and all the features should be implemented in a particular sprint will be discussed or will be arranged. So yes, in the sprint planning meeting, they will be moving the features from product backlog to the sprint backlog, and they'll be assigning the task to the developers or the testers, and then they'll be discussing about the time, like when they'll be able to reproduce, or I can say when they'll be able to complete his or her particular task. So as moving ahead, there is a stand up, means it is a daily stand up meeting, I can say. Here the daily stand up meeting means here the scrum master will be involved, or he plays a main role in this. Here they'll be trying to understand what they have been done in the previous day, what and all hurdles they have faced. Here the scrum master will try to fix the issues at that moment of time, or else he'll just note it down and he'll just try to correct it in the further do. So as moving ahead, that is a review sprint. Here basically the developer will be giving a presentation on, or I can say it is a demo to the product owner, who will be a reflect of the client. Will be like he'll be knowing all the requirements, and if there is any conflict, if there is any confusion between this, there'll be developers or the testers will be communicating to the product owner, which will be in the software company itself, not in the client place. So yes, in the sprint planning, they'll be giving a demo and they'll be just reviewing how is they'll be reviewing the application or the functioning of the application. So it's moving on the last part, which is the sprint retrospective meeting. It is based. So moving on forward, there is a sprint retrospective meeting where the entire Scrum team will be involved. They'll be looking towards the achievements which they have been made into the current sprint, or what and all they have been, we can say, which and all hurdles they have faced, or which and all problems they have faced, and what need to be improved. So in this meeting, they'll be discussing so that in the next sprint, they'll be not making the same mistake. So yes, this is about the agile methodology. Thank you. Thank you from my end. Bye bye.